The empty kitchen, the kitchen was quiet, too quiet, pans rested on the hooks, cold and unused, the small oven sat in the corner like a forgotten machine, its light long dead, a single chair leaned against the table, and dust had started to claim it. The man, Ethan, walked in and looked around. He was tired, his shoulders heavy from long days of work. The colony world was harsh, the soil gave little food, and neighbors kept to themselves. Ethan had grown used to silence, but the silence of his kitchen cut the deepest. He opened the pantry and sighed. Empty jars, broken sacks, and stale bread greeted him. Cooking had never been his gift, and hunger had become a daily guest. It was then that Ethan posted the ad, just a simple note on the colony's public board. Cook wanted, meals twice a day, payment in credits and safe shelter. He expected maybe an old farmer's wife, or a young worker needing some extra coins. He expected normal, but nothing about this night would be normal. The first reply came faster than he thought, a knock at his door, sharp but uncertain. He frowned, wiping his hands on his worn shirt, and walked slowly to open it. The colony was not a place where strangers visited without reason. As the door creaked open, he froze. There stood a figure cloaked in gray fabric, the hood pulled low. The shape was smaller than his own, yet carried a weight, a trembling kind of presence. In her arms, something shifted, something small, something alive. He blinked, not sure if his tired eyes played tricks. The hood fell back, and Ethan's breath caught. It was not a farmer's wife, nor a worker. It was an alien woman, her skin faintly luminous in the dim light, her eyes reflecting the glow of 2 moons outside, and cradled against her chest was a baby, wrapped in faded cloth. Ethan's hand gripped the doorframe. For a heartbeat, he thought to slam the door shut. The colony was strict, aliens were not trusted, some were hunted, some were feared. Taking one into his home could mean danger, but the woman did not move to attack. Her arms tightened around the baby, and her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak. Only a broken whisper escaped, not words, just sound. Her eyes, however, spoke louder than language. They begged. The baby whimpered, a sound too soft for a threat, too fragile for fear. Ethan's chest tightened. He had seen many things in his life, hunger, loneliness, and loss, but he had never seen an alien mother standing at his door with her child, asking silently for shelter. The kitchen behind him was still empty, the ad he had posted still hung in the colony board, waiting for a cook. But here was someone who carried not only hunger but desperation. He knew if he let her in, nothing would stay the same. If he shut the door, the silence of his kitchen would never forgive him. The woman shifted, pulling the baby closer as if ready to turn away. Her shoulders shook. She looked so tired, so thin, as if she had walked through fire just to reach his door. The baby's tiny hands slipped from the cloth and reached into the air, not toward safety, not toward food, but toward him. Ethan's fingers twitched. He had wanted a cook, someone to fill his empty kitchen, but now the question was heavier. Would he fill his kitchen, or his life, with something far more dangerous, far more precious? The night held its breath as he stood in the doorway, his choice hanging like a blade. The visitor with eyes that glowed. Ethan's hand still rested on the doorframe, frozen between fear and pity. The alien mother stood silent, her baby pressed close, her hood slipping lower to show more of her strange face. Her eyes caught the lantern's glow from inside his house, and for the first time Ethan saw them clearly. They glowed, not with anger, not with fire, but with a soft, trembling light. They were eyes of someone exhausted, someone hunted, someone pleading. He had heard stories in the colony tavern, stories of alien creatures with burning eyes that could kill, stories of mothers who sacrificed their young to escape soldiers. But what he saw here was different. This was not a monster. This was a mother with eyes that glowed because of who she was, not because of what she planned to do. The baby stirred, its small face pressing against her shoulder. The child's skin shimmered faintly, like starlight trapped beneath the surface. Ethan swallowed hard, the fear in his stomach rising. If the colony authorities saw this child, they would not hesitate. To them, it would be a danger, a problem to remove, but to Ethan, standing in the silence of his doorway, it looked only like a child, small, helpless, and innocent. The woman finally moved. Lifting one trembling hand, she pointed to his kitchen behind him, then she touched her stomach gently, and then, with her head bowed, she touched the baby's cheek. Her message was clear even without words. She was hungry, her baby was hungry, and she was asking if he would let them eat. Ethan's throat tightened. He could almost hear the empty pans clanging in his kitchen. He had nothing much, but to turn them away would mean something worse than hunger, it would mean death for them, and guilt for him. "Come in," he whispered. Though his voice shook, he stepped aside, his heart hammering like a drum. The alien mother hesitated only for a breath, then slipped inside quickly, moving like a shadow afraid of being chased. The door closed with a soft thud, shutting out the colony world and its watching eyes. Inside, the kitchen was still bare, but now it felt alive. The woman set her baby down gently on the chair, wrapping cloth around its tiny body, then she moved to the counter, her glowing eyes scanning the empty jars and broken sacks. Her hands were thin, her fingers long and careful, yet when she touched the food, it was with reverence, as if each crumb was gold. Ethan watched in silence, his chest heavy with questions. Who was she? Why had she come here? And most of all, why had she chosen his door out of all the others? The baby made a soft sound, like laughter, but strange. The lantern flickered at the same moment, as if the baby's breath had touched the flame. Ethan stiffened, his heart skipping. Was it coincidence? Or was this child more than just a child? The alien mother's hand immediately covered the baby's mouth, whispering something in a language Ethan could not understand. Her glowing eyes flashed with fear, not at him, but at what the sound might bring. Outside, the colony streets were quiet, but Ethan knew they were not empty. Guards patrolled at night, always alert for trouble. If anyone had followed her, if anyone saw her glowing eyes through his window, it would be over. She turned to him suddenly, her face pale, her lips trembling again. This time she whispered a single word, a word broken by her accent, but still clear. "Please." Ethan felt something shift inside him. His house had been silent, his kitchen empty, but now it held danger, life, and something like hope. The visitor with eyes that glowed had stepped into his world, and nothing would ever be the same again. A silent plea. The air inside the kitchen grew heavy. Ethan stood near the doorway, watching the alien mother move carefully around his empty shelves. She touched the cracked jars as if searching for something familiar. Her glowing eyes dimmed with disappointment each time her hands came up empty. The baby shifted on the chair, letting out a soft whimper. The sound pierced through the silence like a knife. Ethan's chest tightened, his hands curling into fists. He had never been good with children, yet the cry of this tiny creature shook him more than he expected. The mother turned sharply, her glowing eyes full of worry. She bent over the child, whispering words in her alien tongue. It was not the sharp sound of commands, nor the harsh tone of fear. It was soft, gentle, the way any mother calmed her child. Ethan felt a strange warmth rise in him, a reminder that love was the same no matter what world it came from. Still, fear crawled at the back of his neck. What if someone outside had heard? The colony walls were thin, rumors spread faster than fire. If one guard knocked on his door tonight, this alien mother and child would be dragged away, and Ethan himself might not live to see morning. The woman straightened, her face pale and her lips trembling. She looked at Ethan then, her eyes wide and shimmering. No words came from her mouth, only silence, but her eyes spoke louder than sound. They were pleading, begging him not to send her away, begging him to let her stay. It struck Ethan harder than any voice could have. Her silent plea carried weight, a weight of desperation and fear. He had seen those eyes before, not glowing, but human, back when the colony starved, back when neighbors begged for food, back when he himself had begged once and been turned away. He remembered the shame of that moment, the cold that followed, and he knew he could not do the same to her. "I don't even know your name," he whispered, though he knew she would not understand. She tilted her head, as if sensing the meaning behind his words. Then she pressed a hand to her chest, over her heart, and whispered something soft. A name, maybe, but too strange for his tongue. The baby stirred again, and she pulled the child close, as if sealing her identity in that bond. Ethan exhaled slowly. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that she was nothing more than a mother looking for safety. But the glowing eyes, the shimmering skin of the baby, and the way the lantern flickered with the child's cry, these were things he could not ignore. Danger clung to them like shadows. The baby reached out again, its tiny hand opening toward Ethan. The gesture was so small, so fragile, yet it felt like a test. Would he take the hand, or keep his distance? Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding. Then, slowly, he stepped closer, his rough human fingers brushing against the baby's glowing skin. A shock ran through him, not pain, not fire, but warmth. It was like touching a spark of life itself. The baby giggled, a sound so innocent that for a heartbeat Ethan forgot the danger outside. The mother's eyes softened, her lips trembling in what looked like gratitude. Still silent, still pleading, but now with a faint hope. Ethan pulled his hand back, his breath uneven. He glanced toward the window, half expecting shadows moving outside. The colony was asleep, for now, but tomorrow would come fast, he knew that. By letting her in, by answering her silent plea, he had crossed a line. There was no going back. The kitchen that had been empty hours ago was no longer empty. It held danger, it held strangers, but it also held life, and in the glow of her eyes and the soft cry of the baby, Ethan felt the stirrings of something he had not felt in years: purpose. The human's choice. The night outside stretched silent and endless. The colony lamps burned faintly in the streets, casting long shadows that pressed against Ethan's small home. Inside, the alien mother sat close to her baby, her body curled protectively, her glowing eyes fixed on Ethan as though waiting for his decision. Ethan paced slowly across the wooden floor, his boots creaking with every step. His mind was a storm. He wanted to believe she was harmless, just a mother in need, but he also knew the colony laws. Harboring an alien was betrayal, punishable by exile, or worse, if anyone discovered her here, both their lives would be crushed in an instant. He stopped by the table, staring at the baby. The child shifted and let out a soft breath. The lantern flame flickered again as if moved by unseen wind. Ethan's chest tightened. It wasn't normal. There was something about this child, something far beyond human. The mother noticed his hesitation. Her thin fingers trembled as she reached into her cloak. Pulling out a small piece of cloth, she unfolded it carefully, revealing strange silver threads woven inside. She pressed the cloth to her chest, then pushed it gently toward him. Her eyes glistened with meaning. This was all she had, her only offering, her only way of saying she had nothing but trust to give. Ethan didn't take it. His hands stayed by his sides, heavy as stone. He didn't want her cloth. He didn't want her thanks. He wanted answers, but he knew he wouldn't get them. Language was a wall too high to climb tonight. He turned toward the window, staring out at the colony street. In his mind, he saw the guards, their armored boots stomping, their weapons ready. He imagined them dragging the mother out by her arms, tearing the child from her grasp. He imagined their cold eyes, the way they treated problems like waste to be burned. And then he imagined himself doing nothing, closing the door, turning away. The thought filled him with sickness. The baby let out a soft laugh, high-pitched and fragile. Ethan turned sharply, his heart pounding. The laugh echoed in his kitchen like music, and for a brief moment, the walls didn't feel so empty. For a brief moment, his lonely life didn't feel so heavy. The mother's eyes met his again. Her lips didn't move, but her expression screamed louder than any word. She was begging him, begging not for riches, not for safety for herself alone, but for the life of her child. It was a silent plea he could no longer ignore. Ethan dragged his chair closer to the table and sat down, his rough hands pressed against the wood, his jaw tight. All right, he muttered, though he knew she couldn't understand. You stay, just for tonight. Her eyes widened, her glowing gaze filling with light and relief. She clutched the baby tighter, pressing her forehead to its tiny head. For the first time since she had entered, she looked less like a hunted creature and more like a mother allowed to breathe. But Ethan knew what he had just done. He had chosen. The moment he let her stay, the moment he decided not to push her out into the night, he had crossed a line he could never step back over. Tomorrow, questions would come. Tomorrow, danger would rise. But tonight, in his kitchen that was no longer empty, Ethan had made his choice, the human's choice. Strange food, strange bonds. The first light of dawn crept into the small kitchen. Ethan sat at the table, rubbing his tired eyes. He had barely slept, his mind restless with the choice he had made. The alien mother was still there, cradling her baby close, her glowing eyes half closed in exhaustion. When the baby stirred with a hungry cry, she rose. Her steps were slow but sure, her gaze falling again on the shelves. This time she reached for the scraps Ethan had left behind, a bag of dried roots, a handful of wilted greens, and a few cracked grains. Her fingers worked carefully, as if she knew how to turn even broken things into something useful. Ethan leaned back, watching. He had expected clumsy hands, or strange fumbling with food she didn't understand, but instead, her movements were graceful, precise. She crushed the roots with a stone, humming softly in her alien tongue. She stirred the greens into a pot with water, adding the grains like she was weaving them together. Even the baby quieted, soothed by the rhythm of her work. A faint smell began to rise. Not the bitter stench of boiled roots, not the bland scent of old grains. It was something richer, deeper, alive with spice and warmth. Ethan blinked in surprise, his stomach tightening with hunger. He had lived on dull food for so long that he had forgotten what real cooking smelled like. The mother tasted the mixture, then adjusted it with something from her cloak. A small pouch of shimmering powder. She sprinkled it into the pot, and the liquid changed color, glowing faintly as it simmered. Ethan stiffened, his eyes narrowing. "What is that?" he muttered, though he knew she couldn't answer, but when the smell spread, he couldn't deny its pull. It wasn't poison, not with the way the baby leaned forward, reaching tiny hands toward the pot. She filled a bowl and set it before him, her eyes cautious. "Waitin'." Gee, Ethan hesitated, staring at the strange soup, its faint shimmer catching the dawn light. For a long moment he thought of the danger, then hunger pushed him forward. He lifted the spoon, tasted, and froze. It was good, better than anything he had eaten in years. The flavors were strange but balanced, sharp yet soothing. Warmth spread through his chest with each swallow, chasing away the cold weight of the night. He set the spoon down slowly, his throat tight. "You really can cook," he whispered, almost to himself. The mother gave the faintest smile, her eyes softening. She dipped another spoon into the pot and gently fed her baby. The child drank happily, glowing faintly with each mouthful. Ethan stared, both uneasy and fascinated. This was no ordinary child, but for now, it was only a hungry baby fed by a loving mother. The kitchen felt different. The same cracked shelves and broken jars stood around him, but now the air carried warmth, the table carried food, and silence carried meaning. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel alone at breakfast. He leaned back, studying them. She had brought danger into his home, that much was true, but she had also brought life, and a bond was forming in the steam rising from the pot, a bond neither of them had asked for, but one neither could escape. Outside, the colony was waking. Boots marched on cobblestones, voices rose in the streets. If anyone knew what was happening inside Ethan's kitchen, they would come crashing through his door. But for this moment, as the strange food filled his stomach and eased his loneliness, he let himself forget the world beyond the walls. For the first time in years, Ethan's kitchen was alive, and in that life, a fragile bond was growing stronger. Whispers of danger. The days that followed felt strange for Ethan. His once empty kitchen was no longer quiet. Every morning the alien mother cooked with steady hands, filling the air with scents the colony had never known. Every evening the baby laughed or cried, its strange glow flickering softly against the walls. Ethan had not spoken much, but his silence no longer felt heavy. The woman could not answer his words, yet somehow she understood his gestures, his sighs, his frowns. Between them grew a language of looks and movements, not perfect, but enough to survive. But the colony was not blind. Neighbors had sharp eyes and sharper tongues. They noticed when Ethan walked less to the tavern and more to the market. They noticed when he bought food he had never cared for before, spices, roots, and grains, and they noticed the faint light in his window at night, a light that did not belong to lanterns. Whispers began, at first, quiet, curious. "Ethan has someone in his house," they said, "a woman, maybe. Or worse." The word worse hung heavy in the air, for in the colony, worse always meant alien. One evening, as Ethan carried a sack of grain back to his door, he felt eyes following him. Two men leaned by the well, their arms crossed. They didn't speak, but their gazes tracked his every move. Ethan's stomach twisted, his grip on the sack tightening. He hurried inside and locked the door. The mother noticed, her glowing eyes flicked to the door, then back to him, questioning. Ethan shook his head, muttering, "They're watching." She didn't know the words, but she knew the tone. Her body tensed, her arms wrapping tighter around her baby. That night, the baby cried again, not loud, but sharp, and as it cried the lantern dimmed and brightened, dimmed and brightened. Ethan clenched his teeth, fear crawling through his chest. If anyone outside saw that flicker, if anyone guessed what lived in his house, it would be over. The next day, soldiers came, not to his door, not yet, but close. They marched through the street, speaking of patrols, asking about strangers. One of them stopped near his gate, staring at his house for a long moment. Ethan held his breath from inside the window, his fists trembling at his sides. The soldier finally moved on, but the message was clear, danger was closing in. Later, a neighbor knocked, an old woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. "I've heard noises from your place," she said, her voice thin but cutting. "Not just you, Ethan, someone else, maybe a child." Ethan forced a laugh, his throat dry. "Just an old oven making sounds." He lied. The woman's eyes narrowed, but she said no more. Still, her steps lingered outside longer than they should have. Inside, Ethan leaned against the wall, his breath uneven. He looked at the mother, who held her baby close. Her glowing eyes were wide, fearful. For once, she did not try to cook, she did not try to move, she just sat in silence, waiting. Her fear pressed into him, heavy as stone. Whispers had begun, suspicion had taken root. The colony was watching, the soldiers were listening, and Ethan knew the choice he had made would soon demand a price. The walls of his home felt smaller, tighter, but in the middle of that tightening trap, the baby laughed. The sound was fragile, pure, untouched by the world's cruelty. Ethan closed his eyes, his jaw tight. He would not let them take that laugh away, no matter the whispers outside. The baby's secret. The whispers outside grew sharper with each passing day. Ethan heard them in the marketplace, at the well, even in the silence of the street. His name was spoken with suspicion, his door watched with quiet eyes. But inside, another kind of secret was growing. The baby, once small and fragile, was beginning to show things Ethan could not explain. It started with the lanterns. Each time the child laughed, the flame brightened. Each time it cried, the flame dimmed. At first Ethan thought it was coincidence, but soon he realized the light obeyed the child. One evening, as the mother cooked, Ethan sat with the baby on his lap. The little one reached toward a spoon on the table, its tiny fingers stretching. The spoon trembled, shifted, and then slid slowly across the wood into its hand. Ethan's eyes widened, his breath caught. The child giggled, tapping the spoon against the table as if it were a toy. The mother rushed over, her glowing eyes sharp with worry. She pulled the spoon away, whispering in her strange tongue. Her voice carried fear, not pride. She pressed her forehead against the baby's head, as if begging it to stay quiet, to stay hidden. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. What is your child?" he whispered, though he knew she could not understand. The mother looked at him, her lips tight, then she lifted her hand, pressing her finger to her lips, a universal command for silence. Her eyes begged him not to speak of it, not even to himself. But Ethan's mind raced. This child was not just alien, not just different, it carried something more, something powerful, and if the colony discovered it, they would not hesitate. They would not only take the mother, they would destroy the child before it could grow. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The baby's faint glow lit the corner of the kitchen, flickering like a star trapped indoors. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts heavy. He had wanted a cook, someone to fill his lonely kitchen, but instead, he had welcomed something that could shake the colony itself. The next morning, the secret grew louder. The baby cried when the mother dropped a pot, and with the cry, every flame in the house sputtered out at once. Darkness swallowed the room. Ethan stumbled, his heart racing. Then the baby's cry softened into a laugh, and the flames reignited, burning brighter than before. The mother covered the child quickly, pulling cloth over its face, whispering frantically. Ethan watched, his jaw clenched. It wasn't just light or spoons, it was energy itself bending to the child's will, a power no human could ever understand. He turned to the window, fear gnawing at him. Outside, he could hear neighbors talking again, their voices carrying. One man muttered, "Strange lights from Ethan's place at night." Another replied, "Maybe he hides something, maybe it's alien." Ethan's stomach turned cold. He closed the shutters, locking the world outside. When he turned back, the mother was watching him, her eyes glowing softly in the dim room. She didn't need words, he understood. This was the secret she carried, the burden she begged him to share. Ethan sank into the chair, his head in his hands. He had thought his choice was simply sheltering a mother and her child, but now he knew the truth. He was protecting something greater, something dangerous, and the colony would never forgive him. If they found out, the baby cooed, reaching again with tiny fingers. The spoon lifted once more, floating into the air like it weighed nothing. Ethan stared, his breath uneven. The baby's secret was no longer hidden, not from him. And now, the question was not if the colony would find out, but when. The hunt begins. The colony could no longer ignore the rumors, strange lights, whispers of laughter at night, and Ethan's sudden change in habits had drawn too much attention. By the time the sun rose on the 8th day, the hunt had already begun. Soldiers walked the streets in pairs, their boots striking the stones with heavy rhythm. They carried questions like weapons, sharp and demanding. "Has anyone seen outsiders?" they asked. "Any travelers, any children that don't belong?" Neighbors, eager for favor, answered quickly. Some pointed toward Ethan's house, their voices careful but eager. Suspicion was fuel, and the fire was spreading fast. Inside his kitchen, Ethan felt the danger before he even saw the soldiers. The alien mother had pressed herself against the wall, her baby in her arms, her glowing eyes wide with terror. The child whimpered softly, the sound too fragile to silence. Ethan pulled the shutters closed, locking the bar across the door, his chest pounding. "They're coming," he whispered, though she did not need the words to understand. A knock rattled the wood, sharp and cold. "Ethan," a soldier's voice barked, "open up, we have questions." Ethan's throat went dry, his palms sweating. He forced himself to call back, "What questions?" His voice cracked with false calm. The soldier's tone was heavy. "Your neighbors speak of voices, of lights, of movement in your house that does not belong. Let us in." The baby stirred, a faint glow spilling from its tiny hands. Ethan's heart lurched. If they saw even a flicker, it would all be over. He turned, motioning desperately for the mother to stay silent, to keep the child hidden. She nodded quickly, clutching the baby so tightly its whimpers faded into her cloak. "I live alone," Ethan called through the door, his jaw tight. "You know that." There was silence on the other side, heavy and dangerous. Then Each soldier spoke again, "We'll be watching." The footsteps faded, but the danger had only deepened. They had not forced their way in, not yet, but their patience would not last. The hunt had begun, and once it started, it never ended until someone was caught. That night, Ethan sat awake, his old rifle across his lap. The mother rocked her baby, her glowing eyes glistening with fear and exhaustion. Neither spoke, but both understood the truth. They could not stay here much longer. At dawn, Ethan walked to the back of his house. He pulled away rotting boards and revealed a narrow tunnel he had not touched in years. It had been dug long ago during the colony's early days, when raiders still came from the hills. A secret path that led beyond the walls, into the wild lands. It was dangerous, but safer than waiting for soldiers to break the door. The mother watched him with a mixture of hope and dread. She stepped forward, placing her free hand on his arm, her touch light but urgent. Her eyes glowed with the same silent plea he had seen the first night. Ethan nodded slowly. "We leave tonight," he whispered, though his voice trembled. The baby cooed softly, its glow flickering against the dim walls. Ethan closed the boards again and straightened. Every shadow outside seemed sharper, every whisper louder. The hunt was no longer a rumor, no longer a question. It was real, and it was coming closer with every heartbeat. The mother held her child tighter, the child who could bend spoons and command flames. Without trying, Ethan gripped his rifle and stared at the door. The hunt had begun, and soon, his small home would no longer be enough to hide them. The escape plan. The air inside Ethan's house grew tight, heavy with fear. Every knock on a neighbor's door, every shout in the distance, felt like it was meant for him. The hunt was spreading through the colony, and Ethan knew time was running out. He rose before dawn, moving quietly through the kitchen. The alien mother watched him with tired eyes, the baby pressed close against her chest. Ethan pulled a worn satchel from under the table, empty except for dust. He began filling it with what little food he had left, dried roots, cracked grains, and a flask of water. The mother tilted her head, confusion in her glowing eyes. Then realization struck her, and fear spread across her face. Ethan nodded grimly. "Yes," he whispered, "we can't stay." He led her to the back wall, to the boards he had loosened the night before. He pulled them aside, revealing the narrow tunnel, dark and cold. The mother clutched her baby tighter, her shoulders trembling. Ethan steadied his voice. "This is our way out." The plan formed piece by piece in his mind. First, they would slip through the tunnel into the fields beyond. Then, he would use the old smuggler's trail through the hills. It was dangerous, filled with rocks and watchful eyes, but it was their only chance. From there, he would lead them toward the abandoned outpost, a place soldiers rarely patrolled. If they could make it that far, they might find transport, maybe even safety. He gathered what little disguise he could, a torn cloak from his storage, long enough to hide her glowing skin, a blanket for the baby, dull brown and rough, to cover the shimmer of its tiny hands. The mother accepted them, wrapping herself and her child. Her glowing eyes were dimmed now, hidden beneath the hood, but Ethan knew the light could never truly be concealed. That night, the soldiers came again. Their boots echoed down the street, their voices sharp. Neighbors watched from windows as they stopped at Ethan's gate. Ethan stood inside, his heart hammering, his rifle at his side. The mother hid in the corner, silent as stone. The baby whimpered once, and Ethan thought his heart would break. but the soldiers moved on, leaving only the promise of their return. When silence returned, Ethan turned to her. "It's tonight," he whispered. She didn't answer with words, only with a slow nod, her glowing eyes wet with fear and trust. He waited until the colony lamps burned low, until the streets emptied and the guards grew tired. Then he lifted the boards again and motioned for her to follow. The tunnel yawned before them, damp and narrow. The mother crawled in first, the baby bundled tightly in her arms. Ethan followed close behind, his satchel on his back, his rifle dragging in the dirt. The tunnel was suffocating, every sound amplified. The baby let out a soft cry, and Ethan froze, listening. No footsteps above, no voices, only the pounding of his own heart. They pressed forward, inch by inch, until the boards of the far exit came into view. Ethan pushed them aside carefully, peering into the night. The field stretched wide and empty, the moons high above casting silver light. He turned to her, his voice low. "This is it." She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with both fear and hope, and for the first time, Ethan felt the weight of his choice not as a burden, but as a promise. The escape plan was dangerous, fragile as glass, but it was the only path left, and together, step by step, they would walk it. A family of choice. The fields beyond the colony stretched wide and silent. Ethan led the way, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his satchel light against his back. Behind him, the alien mother followed closely, her baby pressed to her chest, the rough blanket hiding its glow. Every step was heavy with fear, but every step was also a step away from capture. They crossed through tall grass that swayed under the moonlight. The smuggler's trail wound into the hills, narrow and steep. Ethan had walked it once, long ago, but never with such weight pressing on his shoulders. He kept glancing back, making sure she was close, making sure the baby's small whimpers stayed quiet. Halfway through the hills, the sound of boots shattered the night. Soldiers, their torches flickering, their voices hard. "They came this way," one shouted. Ethan's blood ran cold. The mother froze, clutching her baby so tightly it whimpered. Ethan pressed a finger to his lips, motioning her into the shadows of the rocks. The soldiers spread out, scanning the trail, their lights passed dangerously close, glowing against the stone. Ethan raised his rifle, his finger trembling on the trigger. If they found them, there would be no choice but to fight. But the mother laid a hand on his arm, shaking her head. Her glowing eyes begged him to wait, to trust. The baby stirred, its tiny hands glowing faintly through the blanket. Ethan's heart stopped. The light slipped out between the cloth, faint but visible. One soldier turned, frowning into the dark. "What was that?" he muttered, stepping closer. Before Ethan could move, the mother whispered in her alien tongue, rocking the baby gently. The glow softened, then faded. The soldier paused, blinking. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought the man had seen, thought everything was over. But then the soldier shook his head, muttered a curse, and turned away. The patrol moved on, their boots fading into the distance. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands shook as he lowered the rifle. The mother looked at him, her glowing eyes wet with relief. For a moment, neither moved. Then Ethan whispered, "We keep going." By dawn, they reached the abandoned outpost, its walls crumbling, its roof half gone. Ethan led them inside, finding shelter among the broken beams. It wasn't much, but it was safe, at least for now. The mother laid her baby down on a pile of cloth, her face softening as she watched it sleep. Ethan sat nearby, his rifle still across his knees, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. In the silence, the mother turned to him. She pressed her hand over her heart, then toward him, a gesture of gratitude, a gesture of trust. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I didn't save you for thanks," he whispered. "I couldn't just let them take you." The baby stirred again, reaching tiny glowing fingers toward Ethan. He hesitated, then reached back, letting the small hand curl around his finger. A warmth spread through him, not the fear of danger, but the strange comfort of belonging. The mother watched, her lips trembling with a faint smile, and Ethan realized something. This wasn't just protection, it wasn't just pity, it was family, a family born not of blood, but of choice. Outside, the world still hunted, the soldiers still searched, but inside that ruined outpost, something stronger than fear bound them together. A man who had once lived with an empty kitchen, a mother who had risked everything for her child, and a baby whose glow carried both danger and hope. Ethan looked at them, his voice low but steady. "You're safe with me," he said, "not just for tonight, not just for tomorrow, but for as long as he had breath to give. The alien mother's glowing eyes softened, the baby laughed in its sleep, and in that fragile, dangerous moment, they were no longer strangers, they were a family of choice.